The second year into our marriage, my wife cheated. In the dimly lit lounge, she melted into her lover's embrace with glassy eyes. Shopping bags littered the table. Her paramour wore the shirt I'd personally selected. Darling, you've always had impeccable taste. She'd never respected me, deriving perverse pleasure from trampling my dignity. I simply smiled. The pampered heiress had become exactly the useless creature I'd cultivated. During a business dinner at the royal palace, an associate hesitantly approached. Mr. John, your wife, she's here tonight. Our client smirked over his bourbon. Odd. Miss Ivy's supposed to be the prim and proper type. I excused myself and pushed open the adjacent VIP door. The scene unfolded like a Renaissance painting of debauchery, half-dressed socialites passing champagne kisses. There sat Ivy straddling some hedge fund bro, ruby Cabernet dripping between her breasts as she guided his hand to wipe the spillage. Care to join the fun, darling? Her slurred invitation carried across the room. Might do you good to broaden your horizons. Let's get you home. I lifted her from the suddenly sober stranger's lap, carrying my intoxicated bride past gawking partygoers. She thrashed weakly as I settled her into the Mercedes. Pathetic cuckold. Her drunken sneer fogged the privacy glass. How far will your act stretch? The partition rose. I cradled her face. Voice tender. Hate me all you want, but don't self-destruct. My thumb brushed her cheekbone. With Taylor Corp's IPO next month, scandal could freeze your trust fund. Imagine no more designer boy toys. Ivy recoiled. Stop with the fucking saint routine. As you wish. I stepped back. All wounded devotion. My only wish is your happiness. The slammed door muffled her frustrated scream. I watched taillights disappear before scrubbing my hands raw with antibacterial gel. Even after changing suits, her cloying Tom Ford fragrance lingered. Our marriage began as a transaction. Ivy spoiled princess. Me scholarship kid. When my mother's cancer treatments bankrupted us, her father George wrote $1 million check. 2 years of 100-hour workweeks repaid every cent. Then came his demand, marry my daughter. Civilize her. Ivy had been blowing through cash in Macau's casinos before her father's ultimatum. She viewed our union as life imprisonment. Convinced I schemed for the Taylor fortune, I never corrected her, absorbing every gold digger insult with martyred silence. My indulgence fueled her recklessness. The society darling who once graced charity galas now trended on TMZ for nightclub brawls. Even my friends protested. Why tolerate this? George berated his daughter publicly. You should kneel, thanking John took you. Who else would want damaged goods? I simply poured more wine. The perfect stoic husband. Let them all misunderstand. Bankruptcy papers filed quietly last week would soon collapse Taylor Corp's IPO. Ivy's trust fund. Frozen by noon tomorrow. Let her keep playing the harlot. Soon she'll learn true power isn't in throwing tantrums, but in waiting patiently to collect debts. Every time this happened, I defend my wife to gain more sympathy. Ivy grew increasingly resentful toward me, escalating her outrageous behavior. She was that naive, foolish rich girl, so easy to manipulate. But my ambitions stretched far beyond this. Somehow, Ivy's scandalous club videos leaked. As the mastermind behind Taylor Group's IPO, my marriage to Ivy sparked intense public scrutiny. Panic spread through the boardroom until George exploded with rage. Ivy toyed with her freshly manicured nails, sneering, "They're just friends. John wouldn't mind." Friends? Since when do friends kiss like that? Ivy, don't take people's kindness for granted. George smashed his phone against the marble floor, the screen shattering as Ivy's laughter in the video cut abruptly, tears welling in her eyes. Ivy screamed at her father. "This is your fault. You forced me to marry that social climbing John. He's not my type. Why can't I date others?" Crack. George's palm left a crimson mark on her cheek. He trembled, collapsing onto the sofa, never imagining his daughter could sink this low. "You hit me?" Ivy touched her stinging face in disbelief. "For that gold digger?" Silence. "Without John, do you think we'd have secured the IPO? Competitors are circling like vultures while you play the fool." George clutched his chest, gasping. Ivy finally grasped my true influence, her panicked eyes finding mine. I stepped in smoothly, calming George first. then fetching ice for her cheek. The perfect lieutenant to the CEO. The devoted husband to his spoiled daughter. Everything shifted when Sophia appeared. My hand froze against Ivy's face. George's 18 years younger wife stood there in lavender silk. Curves accentuated. Chestnut waves framing her knowing smile. Need this repaired? Sophia extended the shattered phone. Her voice honeyed. Important files inside. As I reached for it, Ivy snatched the device. Her gaze darted between us. Suspicion flaring. I'll handle it. John, upstairs. Now. She dragged me upstairs. Forgetting her hatred from moments before. Over my shoulder. I caught Sophia watching us. Head tilted like a curious cat. In her bedroom. Ivy demanded. You're not into Sophia, are you? I adjusted my wrinkled sleeve. Don't you trust your father's judgment? I don't trust you. Ask yourself. I spread my hands. Who keeps crossing lines here? I tolerate everything. Yet you keep provoking your father. Soon nobody will stand you, except me. Ivy's defiance wavered. Years of pampering had eroded her critical thinking. That's your job. She finally spat. Emerging from her room, I found Sophia leaning against the hallway wall. Hip cocked provocatively. George wants you in his study. Her eyes glinted under the sconce light. Trouble in paradise? Behind the door lay my wife. Before me stood my stepmother-in-law. The game was evolving. My stepmother Sophia took a step closer. Her delicate fingers slowly smoothed over my collar like a dutiful wife tending to wrinkles. Crossing lines she had no business crossing. I shut the door behind us, forcing a tight smile. You do realize your current husband is my father-in-law? Sophia knew exactly what she was doing, yet still flashed that coy smile. Of course. So what? In the study, George sat grim-faced, oblivious that mere feet away, his young wife had been breathing temptation into my ear. All George cared about was the coordinated smear campaign against Ivy's scandal threatening his company's IPO. John, he began with paternal warmth. I've always considered you family. I know marrying Ivy wasn't ideal. But as her father, his aging face creased with concern despite meticulous grooming. Only you can fix this. The performance mirrored his plea years ago during his own sex scandal. Of course. I feigned sincerity, sliding documents across the desk. Richard's contract terms. He's demanding 2 more percentage points on equity. My voice tightened with manufactured frustration. Our stocks keep plummeting. If this continues. George cut me off with a wave. No alternatives? I shook my head. The signed agreement would destabilize his majority control. Finally, my reckoning approached. George built his fortune on coal mines cutting corners on safety. My mother developed pneumoconiosis from his greed. No cure. Just slow suffocation while I watched helplessly, a broke graduate watching medical bills outpace his minimum wage. When George offered to cover her treatment after discovering my talent at Taylor Industries, I'd been pathetically grateful. Even signed the exploitative contract, believing his lies about mentorship. Then I overheard his drunken boast. 2 lives bought for $1 million. Returned 50-fold. That idiot still thinks I'm his godfather. At the press conference, Ivy transformed from spoiled heiress to trembling victim under flashing cameras. We'll pursue legal action against these baseless rumors, she declared with artful fragility. Backstage, the mask slipped. You're our family dog, she sneered, chin jutting defiantly. Fix your mess. I chuckled as she grabbed my wrist. Don't think you've won. John, I'm still a board member. Daddy would never. Ivy, I interrupted gently. It's not about inheriting the company. Her nails dug into my skin as I revealed the brutal truth. The Taylors need me now, not the other way around. Her proudest assets were about to become stepping stones for my ascent. While delaying the IPO financing matters, I was reviewing documents in my office when Richard called. Come to the Roman Palace. There's someone important you should meet. My car pulled up to the private lounge entrance where familiar broad shoulders caught my eye. John, someone called out. I turned to see my young stepmother Sophia leaning against the restroom door, cheeks flushed with intoxication. Help me up, she slurred, cherry lips curving. I froze. George was supposed to be dining with investors tonight. Why are you here? Please, she scoffed, steadying herself against the wall. I'm still a Peters family heiress. Marriage didn't erase my existence. The realization struck Sophia, still controlled substantial assets from the matriarchal Peters dynasty, dubbed the Amazonian legacy in business circles. This explained why society pages celebrated her union with George as true love rather than tabloid fodder. Are you done here? My driver can take you home. I reached for my cigarettes. Irritation rising. She stumbled into my arms unexpectedly, jasmine shampoo enveloping my senses as her fingers clutched my waist. In this compromising position near bustling restrooms, my stepmother whispered against my chest, "John, after all these years, don't you miss me?" When Richard called post-press conference, triumph laced his voice. George signed the contract. Come celebrate my treat for the mastermind. Sophia's call interrupted my response. John, I have fever. Came the fragile voice. You should call George. I stated coldly. Her pause stretched before pleading, but I need you. Call a doctor. I snapped, ending the call, driving to meet Richard. Sophia's tear-filled eyes haunted me. Destroying the Taylor empire wasn't just business. George had knowingly married my ex-girlfriend. Some debts demand repayment in blood. Our college romance had been improbable. Me as a working-class computer science freshman. Her the arts department princess. At mixers, I'd stare at my shoes while she teased me into blushes. You can't give me diamonds. She'd laugh, tracing my jaw. But you make my heart race. The Peters heiress chose me despite everything. Until she didn't. The fiery passion of young love may blaze like a wildfire. Yet the hidden insecurities in my heart left me restless. I admit it. I was the one who didn't want to go public. And ultimately, I was the one who let her go. Never did I imagine fate would play such a cruel joke. Life has a way of circling back. And here we are under the same roof again. Only now there's a generational twist. My ex-girlfriend, Sophia, has become my stepmother. I knocked on Sophia's bedroom door, hearing her eager footsteps rushing to answer. My gaze instinctively dropped to her feet. No slippers again. I knew you'd come. Our voices overlapped, creating an awkward intimacy that made me instantly regret my impulsiveness. Thrusting the candied fruits, medicine, and warm congee into her hands, I muttered, "Eat first, then take the pills." Sophia tugged at my shirt hem. When I looked up, I realized she wore only a silk camisole nightgown. Flushed cheeks contrasted with her porcelain skin as she stood barefoot in the doorway, eyes glittering. Don't you want to come in? You do realize your husband is my father-in-law? I repeated sternly, holding her gaze. Step inside, she whispered, fingers hooking my collar. And I'll tell you a secret. She led me into her bedroom with deliberate steps. The single pillow on her bed caught my attention. George doesn't sleep here? The question escaped before I could stop it. Sophia tilted her head, studying my rare lapse of composure as if deciphering my deepest thoughts. Would you prefer seeing him in my bed? Though the bedroom lighting was dim, her eyes shone with unsettling clarity for someone supposedly running a fever. When I pressed my palm to her forehead, the cool skin made my expression darken. Don't ever fake illness to get my attention again. I have work. As I turned to leave, Sophia threw herself against me. The thin fabric of our clothes did nothing to conceal her curves pressing into my back. I froze. Hold me, she murmured against my neck. Aren't you curious about my secret? My lips twisted bitterly. What? That you still have feelings? That you want us to mess around? The cruel words hit their mark. Sophia stepped back, eyes glistening as she clenched her fists. George and I never shared a bed. We have a prenup. In that moment, drowning in her defiant gaze, every shred of restraint evaporated. Sophia, I breathed, pulling her close. I've never claimed to be a saint. Why? She asked later, tracing patterns on my chest as we lay entangled. Her satisfied flush mirrored the question hanging between us. Why marry George? Or why seek you out tonight? Her warm breath ghosted over my collarbone. You came because I still can't let go. The admission hung like perfume in the air. As for George, her fingers stilled. Wasn't that your doing? Her words coiled around me like witchcraft spells. Memories surfaced of my mother's critical illness, juggling medical bills and grad school, while watching Sophia constantly compromise her privileged life for my struggling existence. She was the jewel of the Peters family, while I remained gutter debris unworthy of her shine. I never harbored delusions of reaching for the stars. Yet I devoted my entire being to treating Sophia well. But when the Peters family arrived at my doorstep with their contemptuous certainty, offering a transaction in Sophia's name, I knew it was time to let go. Fortunately, George provided me an alternative path back then. I refused the Peters' condescending million-dollar handout, instead signing an ironclad employment contract with George that very day. After breaking up with Sophia, I threw myself into work. By the second year under George's employment, my new project's staggering success positioned Taylor Enterprises for IPO. Just as we approached this milestone, George became embroiled in scandal allegations of assaulting a college student surfaced, compounded by attempts to silence her through financial coercion and intimidation. The media frenzy was instantaneous. Corporate sex scandals always ignite public outrage, and this threatened to collapse Taylor Enterprises' financing. George demanded solutions, and feeling indebted for my mother's medical bills, though unaware of the full truth then, I orchestrated the crisis management media counterattacks, evidence tampering, witness payments. Even as public opinion shifted, George remained paranoid. I need marriage stability, he insisted. An alibi witness. That girl from the gallery exhibition, the one you know. Introduce us. He meant Sophia, whom he'd previously courted during business dealings with the Peters family. The irony choked me, being forced to deliver my ex-lover to my employer's bed. When George demanded Sophia's contact information, I warned him she was my former girlfriend. His response chilled me. 2 years is long enough. You don't own her. My unanswered calls to Sophia's changed number haunted me. Later, George claimed she'd consented to marriage with her family's blessing. Sophia, my cigarette burned to the filter between trembling fingers, the familiar sting grounding me as my world crumbled. Years later, Sophia's tearful confession unraveled the truth. I married him to save the Peters family business. The prenup, I fought them tooth and nail. Her trembling hands cradled my scarred fingers. And George lied, said you were marrying his daughter. The revelation ignited cold fury. George played us both. I hissed, tracing her tear-stained face. Stole my woman. Manipulated me twice over. Did you think I'd let him walk away unscathed? Leaving Sophia's room, I collided with Ivy. The CEO's daughter took one look at me and exploded. You slept with my stepmother. She shrieked, her porcelain features twisting with rage. I remained impassive. Check her temperature instead of making scenes. Someone had to bring medicine when she was burning up. Later, Ivy's baseless accusations to George about Sophia and me triggered his volcanic rage. But I stood unfazed. The once formidable George now trembled before me. His empire's survival hinged on my silence. And we both knew it. The hunter had become the prey, his every desperate glare confirming how thoroughly the tables had turned. The company was in the midst of a critical financing round, with the major investor being my close friend who exclusively backed me. George's equity was being continuously diluted, and should this funding fail, his precarious financial juggling act would collapse entirely. He'd be utterly ruined. I leisurely poured myself tea, reclining on the sofa as I watched George's performance unfold. Though I sensed his suppressed fury, he could only direct his rage at Ivy, berating her recklessness before smashing a teacup at her feet. He threatened to exile her to Carson City warehouse duty if she couldn't control her tongue. Ivy's pleasure-seeking mind couldn't comprehend her father's strategy, collapsing into hysterics about ending her life. Their theatrical father-daughter confrontation in the living room was entirely staged for my benefit. John, George feigned remorse, wringing his hands with manufactured despair. You know I've always believed in you. Ivy's just immature, paying no mind to her childish ramblings. Surely we gentlemen can overlook a woman's foolishness? I nearly laughed aloud. Could the once arrogant patriarch have ever imagined this humiliation? I saw through George's facade. He was buying time until circumstances improved. But George, the frost is coming. The fool you underestimated will bury you himself. When Ivy's car conveniently broke down later, I knew George orchestrated reconciliation attempts. Checking stock fluctuations, I went to retrieve her. Predictably, Ivy had gifted the vehicle to her latest boy toy. Climbing into my car, she theatrically dabbed at dry eyes. Darling, she sniffed. Heartbreak feels so exquisite. Lighting a cigarette, I countered. Should I fetch my own cuckold's hat now? Ivy smirked. What if I just enjoy tormenting you? Her crocodile tears evaporated as she reapplied lip gloss. Get tested, I advised casually. Her mirror snapped shut. You mocking me? Merely suggesting you appreciate current comforts. Why should I? She sneered. With father's IPO imminent and Series D closing, my only life skill needed is spending money. Her eyes narrowed triumphantly. You should beg me not to divorce you. Let's file now. Our prenup ensures discreet handling. I floored the accelerator toward City Hall. Ivy's bravado faltered as I tossed divorce papers at her. Sign when convenient. I'd prefer avoiding court. You dare? She shrieked. What gutter trash thinks? Yet this trash held your interest. I interrupted. Knowing Ivy's perverse pride, she'd always seen me as the Taylor family's lapdog. Incapable of survival, without them my defiance became irresistible poison. The divorce filing proceeded smoothly, though mandatory cooling-off period remained. During the drive back, Ivy sneered. You're no longer a Taylor. Father will strip your responsibilities by evening. I nearly chuckled at her naivety. George had truly raised a masterpiece of stupidity. That night, George confronted me after disciplining his daughter. Was the divorce truly necessary? He pressed. No man enjoys being cheated on. I shrugged. But rest assured, company matters remain my priority. You recognized my potential and saved my mother's life. That debt endures. The unspoken truth hung heavier than words. Winter was coming for the Taylor empire, and I'd be holding the shovel. If it weren't for this company, I wouldn't have achieved what I have today. I do have a conscience. You know. My words visibly relaxed George. My divorce from Ivy worked more in his favor than against given his current predicament. His primary concern remained the financing developments. John, how's the talk with Michael going? He pressed. The stock volatility's getting dangerous. If we don't announce something soon. The 26th floor view overlooking downtown's glittering skyline usually commanded admiration. But George currently resembled an ant on a hot skillet. I advised patience. The storm hasn't passed. Michael's still observing. But the signing's inevitable. 2 weeks max. We can't wait that long. George slammed his desk. Find alternatives if necessary. I hesitated. Besides Michael, only Richard from last partnership has comparable resources. But our previous negotiations. George sighed heavily. No permanent enemies in business. I'll follow up with Michael. You'll hear immediately with updates. Satisfied, he dismissed me while buzzing his secretary. As I exited, I glimpsed Richard's signature on documents entering his office. The fish had taken the bait. George finally initiated new stock issuance. His deal with Richard meant getting fleeced. Explaining the desperate capital expansion. Monitoring market data. I dialed with satisfaction. Schedule the data dump for 7:30 p.m. sharp tonight. Why dinner time? My smile widened. Good drama pairs well with steak. Right on cue. George's celebratory call invited me to the Penthouse restaurant. Paperwork's moving. We're scaling to 2 billion. He toasted. Earlier anxieties replaced by triumph. 6:50 p.m., I offered congratulations. He praised earnestly. This financing scale? All you're doing. 7:10 p.m., I listened intently to his global expansion blueprints. 7:30 p.m., mid-rant about overseas headquarters he'd entrust to me. My phone buzzed. I silenced it. Anticipation curling my lips. 7:40 p.m., his grand gestures froze mid-air when his phone rang. 7:45 p.m., knuckles whitening around his champagne flute. George choked out. Lockdown all communications. Emergency press conference. 7:52 p.m., as updates crackled through his speakerphone. His jacket slipped forgotten to the floor. Useless. Can't handle basic. 7:55 p.m., his wild eyes finally focused on me. Pupils dilated with dawning horror. Lips trembling wordlessly. Was it you? The next second, he lunged at me like an erupting volcano. The middle-aged man's physique posed no threat. I effortlessly pinned his wrist while smoothing his crumpled collar. Rage burned in his bloodshot eyes. I'll kill you. George roared hoarsely. I released him with a shove. He staggered before regaining balance. 7:59 p.m. Uncrossing my legs, I stood and adjusted my dress shirt with a smile. Satisfied? 8 p.m. Fireworks erupted from skyscrapers on schedule, painting George's ashen face in kaleidoscopic bursts. Each explosion shook the night as his company's valuation hemorrhaged 10%, the perfect fuel being George's life's work. Consider this my birthday gift for your 58th. Hope you like it. 8:01 p.m. Veins bulged at George's temples as he rasped. Why? Why? The question's for you. I swirled the 20-year-old French cognac he'd saved for celebrating the financing. Now my victory toast. Know my greatest regret? Gasping like a beached fish. George aged a decade before me. That night at Golden Fortune Club. Hearing you brag about buying a fool's loyalty for $1 million. You made me sign those humiliating contracts. Forced me to marry Ivy despite knowing I loved Sophia. Used me to legitimize that gold digger as your daughter's stepmother. I slid the documents across the table alongside my watch. Be grateful this happened post-financing. Sign. And you'll get enough to disappear with Ivy. Refuse. And watch your empire implode. The ticking filled the silence as wind howled through steel canyons. George scrawled his signature. I handed him the $1 million that once purchased my servitude. By dawn, Taylor Group belonged to me. The leaked documents exposed George's shell games, embezzling funds, cooking books with Richard's help. Richard's karma arrived when their shady financing collapsed. My friend David restructured the carcass within weeks. Ivy's tantrums meant nothing now. When the divorce finalized, I met her at the courthouse steps. Happy, she spat. I adjusted my cufflinks. Watching David's team dismantle her father's legacy across the street. Ecstatic. Ivy Taylor had completely transformed. The once haughty young socialite, despite her desperate attempts to maintain appearances, couldn't conceal her current destitution. She arrived by cab wearing sunglasses and heels, but her entire outfit couldn't be worth more than $500. We maintained an icy silence throughout the process. After signing the documents, Ivy suddenly spoke. If, just if, we'd truly committed to making our marriage work, would you still have done this? Our union was never about mutual affection. I'll admit I had ulterior motives. But you didn't care either, did we? We've both been George's pawns from the beginning. He tried using you to stabilize me and me to reform you. Blame your father if you must. The sky outside stretched cerulean and cloudless. A gentle breeze carried away the moment as I pretended not to notice Ivy hastily wiping her eyes. The real shock came when we exited City Hall. Sophia stood waiting at the steps. Ivy reacted the most violently, nearly slapping me before shouting through tears of rage at the sight of Sophia and me. You swore nothing was going on between you two. John, I'll hate you forever. I watched calmly as she stormed off, leaving Sophia and me in awkward silence. Did you want to talk? Sophia asked with a playful tilt of her head. Or shall we head straight to the courthouse? Would that be appropriate? I chuckled ruefully. Let's talk. There are things I need to ask you anyway. You're wondering why I waited until your wedding with Ivy to reappear. A full year after marrying George? I nodded. Our history read like star-crossed tragedy. College sweethearts torn apart by circumstance. Workplace rivals reunited by cruel fate. George's covert humiliations preceded his ostentatious wedding to Sophia, during which my countless attempts to reach her vanished into void. Otherwise, I wouldn't have resorted to marrying Ivy for revenge. Sophia admitted bitterly. My family was collapsing back then. They offered me a sacrificial lamb to preserve their lavish lifestyles. Did they think I'd surrender willingly? My heart never stopped yearning for you, even after our breakup. Then I discovered my mother had approached you with hush money. I knew you'd refuse, but the shame kept me from facing you. Her voice tightened. I rebelled against the wedding. But my family's methods, the best I could negotiate was a prenup. After the ceremony, I fled to Singapore. George and I lived separate lives on different continents, until your wedding with Ivy. John, you can't imagine how I burned with jealousy watching her. Yet I feared asking if you truly developed feelings. Like some pathetic interloper, I obsessively tracked your every interaction. Thank God you two never acted like real lovers. Or I might have. Her carefully controlled narration made my chest constrict. Hadn't I tormented myself with same doubts about her marriage's authenticity? Love's cruel paradox, simultaneously magnetic and terrifying. I have questions too. Sophia regained composure. Legally, George and I remain married. When you started your schemes, why not consult me first? Weren't you worried about implicating me? I smirked. Weren't you already divorced when you had that fever last month? Her eyes widened. How did you? David introduced me to your divorce attorney. Did you really think I'd cross that line otherwise? Standing close, I saw crystalline hope spark in her gaze. Sophia punched my shoulder lightly. You always keeping secrets. But there's one thing you can't hide. What's that? I grinned, fingers brushing through her hair. She arched an eyebrow as I simply smiled, holding the answer between us like sealed confession. Let's go grab some food. I'm starving. I naturally took her hand as we walked down the steps side by side. Early spring had settled in with renewed vitality, birds circling above our heads before cheerfully flying away. Sophia buzzed with restless curiosity, circling around me demanding what's this about? Her voice carried the crisp sweetness of songbirds in springtime. I simply smiled. There's plenty of time. You'll find out eventually. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more exciting stories. And drop your thoughts on this one in the comments. See you next time.